Combined my son's birthday and Christmas gifts into a high-performance computer, facing backlash from family but prioritizing his dream. I'm a woman in my 30s, and I have multiple children, but lately, it's my second child, my 13-year-old son, who's been on my mind. He'll turn 14 in December, and just this past week, as I sat down with all the kids to start the ritual of making Christmas wish lists, he surprised me in a way that made me pause. He told me there's only one thing he wants. He knew it was expensive, he knew we probably couldn't afford it, and he suggested maybe just some money towards saving up for it would be his best wish this year. What he wants is a high-performance desktop gaming computer, a serious one, to create a video game. Now, my son is incredibly smart and creative. He's always been obsessed with video games, ever since he was a tiny baby sitting in his dad's lap watching him play. Recently, he's been completely engrossed in talking about this game he wants to make. He has folders stuffed full of details, sketches, and mechanics for this game. He's been teaching himself how to code, borrowing my gaming computer, slowly building the foundation of this world he's poured his heart into for the past year. I can see how important it is to him. My husband and I talked about how to support him. We want to back him 100%. With his birthday falling so close to Christmas, though, we realized we'd have to make some tough choices. As much as I'd love to make a big deal out of both his birthday and Christmas, like we have in the past, our finances won't stretch that far this year. There's no way we can manage gifts for the whole family, and the computer, and the desk and chair he'll need, unless we wrap his birthday and Christmas all into those three items. Yesterday, at a family get-together, we adults got to discussing Christmas lists for all the kids. My son's name came up, and my sister chimed in, and don't forget birthday ideas for his party. When I explained we wouldn't be throwing a big birthday party this year, my family instantly got upset. You can't skip his birthday. Grandma always said that having a birthday near Christmas is hard, that it feels like no one cares about your birthday, you have to go bigger, just for them on their day. Don't give your son the idea that he isn't as important as the rest of the kids. I tried to make them understand, we're putting thousands more toward his Christmas just because of what he wants. They wouldn't hear it. According to them, it's not enough. And this got to me, because we've always gone out for his birthday, more than we do for any of the other kids, just to make sure he feels special during the time of year when everyone's so focused on Christmas. I know my son, when he unwraps that brand new computer on Christmas morning, he'll understand what it means. My husband and I still plan to take him out for his birthday, let him pick a restaurant and an activity, give him a card with money in it to put toward the computer. We did debate splitting it up, giving him one item on his birthday and the rest on Christmas. But that would ruin the surprise we've been building toward. And this would be a huge surprise, not something we could usually afford. For months, my husband has agreed to work double shifts and I've picked up a second job, just so we can pull this off for him without taking away from what we do for the other kids. All of this leaves me wondering, am I really a terrible parent for combining his birthday and Christmas for just this 1 year, so we can get him his dream gift? A little later, after reading and considering so much advice, I called my husband at work, and we decided we'll talk to our son as soon as he gets home and get his perspective. The only reason it hadn't crossed my mind to include his opinion was, honestly, because of how much my own holidays lacked growing up. My gifts often disappeared by February, pawned or sold. But now Christmas is my favorite holiday, and it means a lot to me to create magical memories and see that look of delight on my kids' faces as they open their presents. Gift giving, I realize, is really my love language. It fills me up to hunt down the right thing and give it to someone just to see their face light up. Update 1. So, we started the conversation with, so for your birthday and Christmas, we would like to get you one big gift. It's expensive, but we know you'd love it. Would it upset you if we combined your birthday and Christmas gift for this item? The moment those words left my mouth, I could see the gears turning in his head. His eyes lit up, and he blurted out, "Don't tell me it's the gaming computer?" Of course, my face gave it away instantly. He was absolutely thrilled and assured me he wouldn't be upset about the combined gifts, especially once he knew what it was. With that out in the open, the plan is to still take him out for his birthday and give him some cash to use for gaming accessories for his new setup. We talked about whether he still wanted a party, maybe a much smaller one, but he let out a sigh of relief and said, "I haven't liked birthday parties for years. Being around that many people at once and having to stay happy the whole time is really tiring. But I know how much you like planning them, so I didn't say anything. I'd much rather go out for dinner and maybe stop by Best Buy or GameStop." It all made so much sense, so plans quickly shifted. Now, we're doing exactly what he wants. I sent out a mass message to family. If anyone wants, they can stop by on his birthday to give him a card or a present and wish him happy birthday in person. Regarding our other kids and gifts, let me clarify a bit. My kids' gifts vary a lot, and it all depends on what they ask for and their responsibility levels. For example, my 9-year-old wanted to put a PlayStation on his Christmas list, but this year he broke his father's Xbox controller and left my iPad within reach of his 3-year-old sister, which she promptly broke. I told him we'd revisit the idea next year if he showed a bit more responsibility. However, a new bike is definitely happening for him. He's taken great care of his current one and even fixes it himself. My 12-year-old daughter's wish list was sweet and simple. Some smell good stuff, lotion, hooks for her purses, and a jewelry box. Our 15-year-old daughter asked if I could fix up my old gaming PC for her and get her a small desk to set it up in her room. We even discussed whether her brother getting a new PC would bother her, but she said not at all. She loves my old computer because it's the one she learned to game on, and the memories we made playing together make it priceless for her. My 6-year-old daughter? She went with one request, a bike that isn't girly, dinosaurs preferred. As for my 3-year-old, as long as it makes noise or is a baby doll, she couldn't care less. Honestly, the amount spent on each one doesn't always match, but they always end up truly happy with their gifts. As for Santa, in our house, he only brings candy, stuffed animals, coloring books, or reading books. I've always been very intentional about this. I never wanted my kids to go to school and make someone feel bad because Santa gave them a game system and their friend only got a book. So, Santa just brings what the elves could make. There was never a chance that his birthday would be forgotten. We always planned to have a special dinner out, let him pick an activity, and give him a card with $100 inside to put toward his computer. Now, that card will be a little shopping spree for accessories. And, naturally, there will be cake. Since I run my own bakery, I make all my kids their favorite cakes from scratch for their birthday. Birthdays are always special in our house. For each of the kids, we plan an activity at a place they love and usually have a big party, inviting everyone. The amount spent varies, simply because some kids' wishes are more expensive than others, but the older kids get it, and not once have they expressed unhappiness because of that. I always work my hardest to make their biggest birthday wish come true. Once the choice was made, I let everyone know what he wanted, and after speaking with my son, most of the family understood and accepted it happily. My parents are buying him the desk for his setup, my husband's parents are getting a nice gaming chair, and my sister is contributing a lamp and a whiteboard with markers to hang above his desk so any inspiration that strikes can be written down immediately. My husband's aunt was surprisingly generous and offered to pay for half of the computer so I could quit my second job. She's giving our oldest daughter an equal sum for her car fund, and the younger kids will get gift cards, her gift of choice, so we'll do our annual mini shopping spree and send her photos, since she hates shopping herself. Honestly, talking it through with him worked out even better than I'd hoped. I had worried the surprise would be ruined, but I even apologized to him for possibly taking the fun out of it. He just laughed and said, "Mom, you never stick to the plan. There will be more surprises for me on both days," and he's not wrong. I've already started researching beginner coding classes online and picking out small desk items he might like. Planning this for him has truly been a joy, and knowing we're giving him exactly what he wants, no forced parties, all the right gear, and memories to last, makes it all so much better. Update 2. We ended up doing his birthday exactly the way he asked. He picked a little ramen place downtown that he's been obsessing over because the bowls are the size of his head, and then we walked over to the tech store so he could do his mini spree. I watched him camp out in front of the keyboard testers like he was choosing a wand. He'd close his eyes, tap, listen, and then move a switch cap one space over and try again. He settled on one with quieter switches, because when she naps, he said, nodding at his 3-year-old sister, "I don't want to wake her if I'm debugging," and a mouse that fits his hand just right. He picked a big mouse pad with a smooth edge and a headset that he said makes footsteps in games sound like they're on different floors. He kept looking through the glass at the graphics cards like they were museum pieces and then looking back at me with this grin he couldn't turn off. The funniest thing happened while we were there. He sat down at a demo computer to test how the keyboard felt in an actual program and, without even thinking, opened up the little sandbox engine they had installed to let kids play with code. In 5 minutes he had a square jumping with spacebar, changing sprites on the jump arc, and he added this goofy little particle effect that looked like confetti because his sister kept chanting party jump. The associate at the counter came over to see what he was doing and just laughed. He said, "Okay, you're dangerous," and walked us to a manager who pulled out a little stack of manufacturer rebate cards and combined a couple of open box deals we never would have found on our own. We saved enough that I added an extra SSD to the list so he can keep his project files separate. My son tried to hand me back $20 from his birthday cash because he had too much fun already, and I nearly cried in the mouse aisle. The desk and chair got delivered 2 days later, and we realized immediately that his original room layout wasn't going to work. The desk was deeper than we imagined, and there's a baseboard heater where the chair needed to go. He grabbed the whiteboard his aunt sent and sketched a new layout like he was planning a heist. Bed here, bookshelf swapped, desk under the window so the light hits the whiteboard without glare. My dad came over with a drill and cut a perfect circle in the back panel for cables, and then my husband and son fed a strip of LED lights around the underside of the desk so the whole thing glows like a spaceship at night. When the chair finally clicked together, he sat down and rolled himself up to the empty spot where the tower will go and just breathed. He wrote at the top of his whiteboard, in giant letters, "Devlog," and then underlined it 3 times. We did cake at home after dinner. I made him a computer cake, tower, monitor, keyboard, the works, with the inside layers dyed this ridiculous gradient so when he cut into it there was RGB lighting in the slice. He laughed and held his plate up to the lamp like it was a stained glass window. He asked me to pipe tiny code on the fondant monitor, and I wrote print happy birthday, and he said, very seriously, "Actually, could you put / happy birthday instead? It's a comment. It feels right." It did. A small miracle, My husband's aunt sent her half early, so I turned in my notice at the second job that same night. I can finish out the week and be done before Christmas. When I told the kids, my 3-year-old climbed into my lap and patted my face and said, "Mommy, not go work in dark." And my son looked over his shoulder at me and mouthed, "Thank you," without saying a word. I didn't realize how much I was holding it until then. He got his first real accessory from someone unexpected, too. The librarian from our branch recognized him when we stopped in to pick up a hold. She's the one who always orders the coding books he requests, and she handed him a flyer for a free teen game jam they're doing in January at the Makerspace. "It's more about learning than winning," she said. He stared at the line where it said "Bring your own idea" and told her, "I have 9. He came home and immediately wrote on his whiteboard to-do list, "Game jam, make movement feel good. Add dinosaur." He promised his 6-year-old she could name the dinosaur if she promised not to ride it in real life like her bike. Last night he sat in his new chair, under his new lamp, at his new desk, with an empty space beside him that might as well have been glowing, and he practiced with his new keyboard on my old computer in the living room while I made dinner. He shouted, "Mom!" And I ran in thinking something was wrong, but he spun the monitor around to show me a little rectangle sliding across a gray floor. "It looks like nothing," he said, grinning so hard it hurt to look at him, "but it feels right when it moves." He let his little sister mash the keys and turned it into a baby mode where confetti sprays every time you press anything. They both screamed laughing and begged to keep testing. My parents brought the desk by with a small surprise tucked in the drawer, a framed photo of my husband as a teenager at his own first computer, hands on the keyboard, eyes on the screen, mouth open in the same exact way. We put it on the shelf where the light hits it in the morning. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is the happiest I've ever seen him on his birthday. No party, no balloons, no streamers plastered to the ceiling, just ramen, a walk through a store, a careful choice, a cake that cuts into color, and a whiteboard with a plan. When I turned his light off that night, he whispered, "It already feels like mine," and pointed at the empty spot where the tower will sit. Christmas morning is going to knock him flat. I know it. He thinks he knows what we picked, and he does, mostly, but my husband and I tucked in one thing he doesn't know about. It isn't huge or fancy, just something that will make that first boot up feel like the start of something. I can barely keep my mouth shut when he leans on the empty space and talks to it like it's a dog waiting at the door. Update 3. Christmas morning, my 3-year-old was up before the sun, patting my face like a tiny woodpecker and yelling, "Santa came," which is how we found ourselves in that soft blue hour where the living room is just the tree and the sound of paper tearing. Stockings first, like always, candy, crayons, a dinosaur book for the 6-year-old, a paperback for the 12-year-old with a heroine she loves, a little puzzle for the 9-year-old that he solved before anyone had coffee. My 15-year-old peeled the tape off a small desk lamp and said, "This is perfect," and I realized that, for all the big things we'd planned, the house felt gentler this year. No party glitter stuck to the ceiling. No second job waiting. Just cinnamon rolls and my husband in his ridiculous reindeer pajama pants making the coffee too strong on purpose. We did the family gifts, and he was patient in that way that lives right next door to trembling. He helped his sister clip a belt to her new dinosaur bike before he opened his own small packages, cracked the case on the headset like he was unboxing a Fabergé egg even though he picked it himself, and laughed when his 3-year-old marched around the tree with her stuffed animal yelling "party jump" like it was a legal order. He kept glancing down the hallway toward his room the way you do when you know there's a huge dog waiting behind a door. When it was time, I didn't try to make a drum roll. I just said, "You ready?" And he actually stood up and smoothed his shirt like he was going on stage. We walked down together, his sisters trailing behind like ducklings, and I told him to close his eyes at the doorway. My dad had come by late on Christmas Eve to help run the cables, and we'd tucked the tower under his desk where the empty space had been living in his head all week. We plugged it in at dawn so the power strip could be the hidden on/off switch, and when I said, "Okay, turn it on," he dropped to the chair like he was kneeling and reached under the desk with both hands, feeling for the button. The fans spun and the LEDs did that gentle inhale-exhale glow we tested in the dark with the door cracked, and he just stared at the reflection in the side panel like it was a campfire. His new lamp caught the tiny brushed metal plaque I stuck under the power button and he leaned in to read it. Build 01-1225. It feels right when it moves, and then he didn't say anything for maybe a full 5 seconds. Just pressed his thumb to it like a lucky coin. He didn't know about the little extra. It really wasn't much. I'd asked the tech store guy 1,000 questions and finally asked one that made sense. Where do those sound libraries everyone uses come from? He printed me a list and I picked the one where the demo made the footsteps sound different on wood and tile and grass, because the night at the store he told me that was his favorite thing about the headset. So when his desktop booted, a window popped up that said Day 1 and inside was a folder called Assets with a license, file and a readme in my voice. "You own this. Use it. First boot, first build. Press start when you're ready." The icon for the little launcher I'd set to open on first run was a pixel dinosaur in a party hat that my 6-year-old drew with her tongue sticking out. My husband scanned it at midnight and I stayed up too late making it into a square. The 3-year-old squeaked, "Hats," and then very seriously pressed one finger to the screen as if trying to boop it through the glass. He clicked. He didn't look at me first. He didn't ask, "Can I?" He just did it, and when the splash screen I'd cobbled together opened, a black background with the words devlog, build 01 in his handwriting that I photographed off the whiteboard, he made a sound I hadn't heard from him since he was small and mastered a new Lego piece. He spun the chair once, fast, like he had to move the feeling through his body to keep from popping. Then he said, "Okay," in that quiet way he gets when he's about to disappear into a thing. We let him. The rest of the house did its Christmas thrum around him. The 9-year-old took 3 laps around the block and came back to report the bike turns like a video game. The 12-year-old held lotion bottles under everyone's noses and filed her jewelry in a box she kept opening and shutting like it was a treasure chest. The 15-year-old and my husband carried her desk upstairs in that sideways shuffle that makes you believe in geometry, and when they set my old PC down on it she cupped the side of the case like it could feel her hand. My 3-year-old dressed her baby doll in 4 outfits in 20 minutes and then climbed into my lap with a sticky peppermint grin and asked, "Mommy, not go work in dark again?" And I got peppermint on my shoulder because I nodded too hard. Every so often I'd hear him talk to himself. Not words, exactly, little noises and tiny one-word notes thrown into the room like breadcrumbs. Smoother. No. Okay. He waved his sister over to the doorway and asked, "Name him now." "I'm adding him." She stood there holding a dinosaur who looks like a potato with legs and announced, with the kind of confidence only a 6-year-old owns, "Soup." He blinked. "Soup?" She folded her arms. "Souposaurus." He turned back to the screen and typed it without even teasing her, and when he hit play, the prototype square slid across a gray floor and then a second later a little green blob with tiny triangles for teeth popped in and followed at a respectful distance. He checked something and then said, "Souposaurus isn't allowed to bite in the tutorial," and she saluted him. We broke for cinnamon rolls when the 3-year-old started to nod off, and he took his plate back to the desk because watching a progress bar while frosting your breakfast is apparently the purest joy available to a 13-year-old. My husband's aunt FaceTimed from her kitchen and watched him press a key. She doesn't like technology but she squinted at the screen and said, "Is that the machine?" Like it was a horse he'd been saving up for. He nodded and said, "I love it," and she put her hand over her heart and told him he had to send her a dinosaur when it was done so she could put it on her fridge. He promised Soup would visit. He asked me, very politely, if I minded if he adjusted his shelves because the books were reflecting on the monitor. He moved them like Tetris, quick and exact, making a little shrine of the photo of his dad at the old computer and a tray where he lined up his thumb drives like silver mints. The whiteboard got a new line, build 01, footsteps, Soup spawns, player slides are too slippery. I don't know what it is about watching someone you made write a list and then cross things off it, but it broke me a little, in a good way. Every time he dragged a letter out of one word to make room for another, he smiled to himself like the paper was telling him a secret. The only time he really came up for air was when the baby went down for a nap. He rolled back from the desk and rested his hands on the arms of the chair and said, "Quieter mode," and switched his keyboard profile to the softer lights and the lower sound. He caught my eye and did this tiny nod toward the hallway, and I realized he was asking if the startup sound I'd set, just a soft chime and the 3-year-old's recorded press start, whispered into my phone the night before, had woken her up. It hadn't. He exhaled and then made footsteps on carpet happen, and then on tile, and then on wood, until the headset made it all sound like walking through our house. There was a knock after lunch. Our librarian, yes, the same one, had taped a bow to a padded envelope and left it on the porch because the branches closed on Christmas, but I live around the corner and I couldn't help it, the little note said. Inside was a gently used copy of a book on game design and a post-it on the first chapter that said, "Start where you are." He carried it to his room like it might combust if he moved too fast and then tucked it on the shelf next to the photo of his dad, spine out, already a tool, not a display. When it got dark he turned the LEDs down to that deep space blue and asked if we wanted to see something. We all piled in, even the 3-year-old, who dragged a blanket behind her like a cape. He hit run and the rectangle wasn't a rectangle anymore, it was a little rounded character with a suggestion of a face and enough bounce in the jump that you could feel it in your knees. Souposaurus trailed behind, wearing the party hat like he was born with it. He pressed left and right and then he pressed space and the confetti came back, the tiniest sprinkle, not a storm, and my 3-year-old clapped her hands softly and whispered, "Party jump," like letting a secret out of a jar. He paused the game and wrote something on the whiteboard without looking. I read it over his shoulder, "Movement feels good." He underlined feels. He put the period on it like a promise. He didn't stay up too late. He didn't have to. He shut the computer down, thumb on the plaque again like he was telling it goodnight, and turned to me in the doorway with that same grin from the store, smaller now, steadier. "It didn't even feel like opening presents," he said. "It felt like starting." Then he bent and picked up his sister's blanket and handed it to her and shooed everyone out with an exaggerated bow because the dev log had one more line to get before bed and the only person who could write it was him. Update 4. The makerspace doors stuck a little with the cold, so the librarian had to lean into them with her shoulder and laugh when they groaned open like a haunted house. It smelled like warm dust and hot plastic from the 3D printers and that faint lemon cleaner everything public touches dries with. He had his backpack on so tight the straps cut little trenches in his hoodie and he carried his SSD case in his hand like a baton. On the ride over he didn't talk, Just watched the frost on the edges of the windshield waver when the defroster hit it, and every few minutes he looked down at his phone where he had a photo of his whiteboard set as his background like a compass. They'd strung a banner that said Teen Jam in marker, each letter a different kid's handwriting, and pushed tables together in pairs so everyone had enough outlet space. A volunteer with a lanyard and a tiny wrench pin he'd clearly been waiting his whole life to wear took one look at my son's backpack and said, "We've got machines you can use if you don't want to set yours up." He nodded immediately. "Safer," he said under his breath, like he was telling himself something. When they did the theme reveal, they flicked the lights off for drama and popped the projector on the wall. One word. Footprints. He turned his head toward me without moving anything else, eyes wide like a deer in the pictures my dad keeps in the hallway. When the room made that soft noise people make when something lands just right, he put a hand over his mouth and tried very hard not to smile like he had planned the universe. He didn't. But it felt like it. He slid into a chair and started sketching with his finger on the table the way he does when he's trying to feel something before he writes it down. "Footsteps can tell a story without words," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. "You can do a level with just sound." He didn't stay alone very long. A girl with an undercut and a sweatshirt that said "I draw monsters" like it was a threat sat down across from him and took a pen cap between her teeth and chewed it until the plastic squeaked. "I'm terrible at code," she said, which was a lie I could spot from orbit because everything she did next was precise in that way people get when they've taught themselves how to make their hands do something their brain wants them to. A tall kid with a clarinet case and a mom who waved from the door with both hands because she had a baby in a sling joined them and said, "If it makes noise I want to be inside it." My son looked at the two of them for 1 second, then at the word on the wall, then at the SSD in his hand. "Okay," he said, in that voice he uses when he's gone up a tiny stair in his head. "Okay." He didn't bring the tower, and thank God. The lab machines had fresh installs and the volunteer with the wrench pin knew the trick for running the engine without admin rights like it was a magic trick he kept up his sleeve. They got stuck anyway, because of course they did. The build he'd done at home wanted a plug-in the lab didn't have and the internet decided to be molasses right then. He closed his eyes for 5 seconds, breathed in so deep I saw his collarbone lift under the hoodie, and then said, "Start where you are," like he was reading the post-it from the librarian aloud. He didn't try to pull the whole thing across the ocean through a straw. He opened a new project. He built movement from nothing, and it took him 10 minutes to make that rectangle slide and stop with that same tiny little catch on the end of the deceleration that made him grin on Christmas. The monster's girl drew Supasaurus with her whole arm, a big circle of shoulder, and put a pot lid on his back like a turtle shell because my 6-year-old had whispered to her that soup needs to be safe in case it rains. The music kid listened to him describe wood versus tile versus grass and then took out the clarinet like the most natural thing in the world inside a room full of computers and made 3 different footstep sounds with his tongue and the keys in the pad of his palm. The room laughed the second time and then got quiet the third because all of a sudden it wasn't funny, it was good. I walked the little girls to the snack table and back, detoured around the soldering station where someone breathed melted metal, and then sat on the floor by the door because the room had the hum I remember from my bakery on Thanksgiving Eve, the one where every person is doing a different part of the same song. He said, "Baby mode," to the girl and she drew a star next to it and the clarinet kid started tapping a rhythm with his fingernail that my 3-year-old instantly matched with her feet. Heel toe, and then yelled, "Party jump," right into the belly of the room and made 3 teenagers grin without permission. It wasn't all magic. He lost 5 minutes of progress when he hit play without saving and the engine took one of those naps that isn't a crash but feels like a scolding. The monster's girl's pen died mid-outlined soup and she looked at him like she'd lost a limb until he handed over his own and said, "It's the one I like, try not to like it too much," which made her huff and then draw more carefully. The clarinet boy accidentally looped a sound so it ticked like a metronome under everything, and they all went a little insane trying to find it until my son took one ear off the headset and said, "It's not a bug, it's a clock," and changed the level so the ticking belonged, and then it did. At lunch I ran home with the girls to grab a bag of dinosaur sugar cookies I decorated the night before without telling him they existed, and when we came back the associate from the tech store, the "Okay, you're dangerous one," was there at a folding table labeled sponsor with a small stack of cables and a sign that said free to a good project. He gave me a nod that said good morning in the same way bakery people greet each other when it's way past morning for us, and then he walked over to my son's table and gave them a USB microphone he said made footsteps sound more like footsteps and less like tapping 3 heads together. "You'll hear the room," he said. "Use the room." They did. The clarinet kid recorded carpet by rubbing his sleeve on it. My son got tile by tapping his knuckles on a piece of acrylic the monster's girl found in a drawer. Grass was my 6-year-old's hairbrush on a piece of construction paper and we all pretended we didn't know where the paper came from. The librarian came and perched on the edge of a chair and didn't touch anything but somehow moved everything along by just being there. When he got stuck on the way Supasaurus followed, where sometimes Soup would try to stand in the same world as the player and they'd clip like ghosts, she said, "Could Soup wait?" And he realized he'd coded the dinosaur's loyalty like a magnet and all he had to do was add a tiny patience, a half-second delay, a pause where Soup remembered to be a separate thing. He typed with his whole hand when that landed, shoulders and elbows and breath. There was a moment late in the afternoon when the room's energy got thin. Sugar, code, nerves, the air dry enough to make your skin hurt. The clarinet kid's mom had to take the baby home because naps are nap-shaped and you can't put a square day into a round toddler. The monster's girl stared at the screen and rubbed the pen across the bridge of her nose and left a tiny gray streak. My son pushed his chair back and stood up for the first time in an hour and a half and said, "Everyone stand up," in a voice I know from hearing his dad ask the kids to carry water jugs inside. He raised his hands and bounced once on his toes and the entire row followed, a wave of stiff shoulders loosening. 2 minutes, he said. We're walking. Footsteps need reference. They walked the hallway in a snake, around the 3D printer that had finished a little boat and was cooling with the pride of a dog that brought back the right stick, past a bulletin board that said learn to solder and a photo of 10 kids, holding ugly ducks from a different class. They walked on tile and rubber mat and concrete and the thin carpet that always smells like sneeze near old magazines. He listened. He came back and changed the transition between 2 rooms in his level with 3 keystrokes and then pressed play and nodded like the universe had agreed to one small thing. They didn't win, because there wasn't really that kind of finishing line. There was a projector and 2 minutes per team and applause that wasn't polite, it was warm, and a hand-painted sign someone held that said you did a thing and a bell that the volunteer with the wrench pin rang when someone showed something that worked. When my son pulled up their build, the title screen said Supasaurus steps in letters that wobbled like they were written by the same person who had labeled my flower bins when I taught the 6-year-old to print. He clicked, and there it was, a small person, rounder now, with a face that was just enough suggestion to let your brain fill it in, walking on surfaces that sounded like the room we were in. Soup trailed, and when he stopped, Soup stopped and bumped his leg like a cat who knows you're sad. He hit space once and the confetti sprinkled and my 3-year-old whispered it like a prayer. At the end, the character stood at the edge of a room and you couldn't see the way forward, but you could hear the footsteps in the next space, 3 soft ones on wood and then nothing, and the clarinet kid lifted the mic like a conductor and counted silently with his fingers and you realized if you trusted the sound and jumped, you'd land. He did, and the room made a noise that belongs to new things. After, an instructor from the community college's game design program, glasses pushed up into hair and a scarf she forgot she was wearing still around her neck, came over and crouched so she'd be eye level with my son and the monsters. Girl. Thursdays, she said. Open lab. Community hours. Bring this. Push it further. I can't teach you in 6 minutes, but I can put you next to people who know the boring stuff so you can keep wanting the good parts. She turned to me and said, softly, like not to scare anything, he's listening before he's building. Don't let anyone talk that out of him. The librarian, 3 feet away pretending to rearrange flyers, made a noise like she'd just taken the perfect loaf out of the oven and was dying not to cut into it yet. On the way home he held the SSD case in both hands and kept opening and closing it without taking anything out, just hearing the click. He didn't plug his new machine in when we got inside. He took the whiteboard down like it was fragile and carried it to the kitchen table and set it down on a towel and rewrote the whole dev log from today by hand, date and little arrow and all, top to bottom, leaving the old lines on the floor like shed snakeskin. He added a new thing in a box at the bottom, build 02, 0120, start where you are, and then stuck the old paper in the tray with the thumb drives like it might be useful later when he wants to remember how it felt. My dad came by with a bag of felt feet he cut out of leftover carpet underlayment because he saw the scuffs on the floor where we'd been rolling chairs back and forth, and he put them under the legs of the desk while my son read me the paragraph the college instructor had written on a sticky for them about version control in marker that bled a little. He said it like a foreign language he wanted to learn. Branches, he read, and then he laughed to himself like someone had just told him a joke they don't know is funny yet. He went in his room and taped the plaque under the power button the way he always touches to say goodnight, then slid his fingers down to the edge and tapped twice like he was telling it, quietly, there's more. Before bed he let the 6-year-old name the level they made today. She thought for a long time and then said, don't leave a mess, with the sincere gravity of a person who has been yelled at about crayons on the floor. He didn't change a thing. He typed it as is. The 3-year-old laid on the rug under his chair eating the broken dinosaur cookies like they were better because they were broken and whispered, soup not bite, and he said, not in the tutorial, without looking away, and then he turned the screen so I could see a tiny patch of wood floor that sounded exactly like our hallway and a tiny patch of carpet that sounded exactly like the room where the tree used to be, and I realized he'd stolen our house in pieces and put it in a game. I went to turn his light off and he stopped me with one finger without being rude and said, wait. Last thing. He leaned in so close his nose almost bumped the glass and added a line at the very bottom of the whiteboard so small I didn't see it until he moved. He didn't underline it, just put a dot at the end like he always does when it matters. It said, movement feels right when you listen first. Then he put the pen down like he was finished writing for the day and touched the little metal plaque with his thumb and smiled like the next build already had a name.